Before I tell you about the gut, the thyroid, or parasites, I have to tell you the story of the last time I went to a doctor for my own health. Many years ago, my body suddenly decided it no longer liked certain foods. Foods that I'd eaten my entire life started fighting back. I was bloated, exhausted, my muscles hurt, my joints hurt, everything hurt. So I did what everybody does. I became an honorary member of the medical system. They sent me here, they sent me there, and then somebody said, maybe it's your thyroid. I thought, great, finally an answer. So I marched into the hospital expecting a nice little thyroid test. Big mistake. I walked through the door, and it's like I accidentally wandered into a nuclear power plant. There are biohazard signs everywhere. You know, those yellow and black ones with the symbols. And the technician opens this special refrigerator and puts on these heavy protective gloves and takes out this little container very carefully. And he's carrying it down the hallway like he's transporting plutonium. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm supposed to drink the thing everybody else is afraid to touch? Then they told me to wait for the doctor. A few minutes later, she walked into the room with a limp. And then I looked a little closer, and one side of her face was drooping. And I remember thinking, hold on, I'm about to drink radioactive material, and the doctor ordering the test looks like she's already been exposed. That was it. I got up, ran out, never drank the stuff, and now before anyone writes me letters, I'm just telling you exactly what went through my mind in that moment. From that day on, I decided I was going to spend my career trying to understand the body in a different way. Now, let me back up a little. This didn't start with my thyroid. It started because my body suddenly changed. Foods that I'd eaten my entire life began causing reactions. I'd finish a meal and think, what on earth is that? Then came the fatigue, then the muscles hurt, then my joints hurt, and then it felt like my entire body was inflamed. I wasn't looking for a new philosophy of health. I certainly wasn't planning to spend the next 20 years reading research papers for fun. I was just trying to figure out why I felt so awful. So I started reading, and at first I thought maybe I had parasites. The more I read, the more I thought, well, that actually sounds like me. And then I discovered that many of the symptoms associated with parasites also overlap with thyroid dysfunction, like fatigue, brain fog, digestive problems, muscle aches. So suddenly I had two possible explanations and absolutely no idea which one was right. That's when I thought, fine, I'll get my thyroid checked. And you already know how that turned out. So now I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. And remember, this was before AI. This was back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. If you wanted information, you had to go find it. The more I read, the more convinced I became that I might have parasites. And before anybody panics, I'm not saying parasites are the cause of every health problem. They're not. But I learned they were much more common than I had ever imagined. Some can interfere with digestion, some influence the immune system, some affect the gut microbiome. So I'm thinking maybe this is it. Now I have two things that could explain why I feel terrible, but here's the important part. Looking back, I don't think parasites were the whole story. I don't think my thyroid was the whole story either. I think they were both clues pointing me towards something much bigger. And this is where everything started to change for me. Up until this point, I had been thinking the way most of us think. What's my diagnosis? Is it parasites? Is it my thyroid? Is it food? Is it inflammation? I was looking for one answer, but the more physiology I learned, the more I realized the body doesn't organize itself that way. It organizes itself as a series of communicating systems. Think about it. If parasites disrupt the gut environment, they can influence the gut microbiome. And the gut microbiome helps maintain the intestinal barrier. The intestinal barrier is in constant communication with the immune system. And if the immune system becomes activated, inflammation can increase and it affects thyroid function. Poor digestion may reduce the absorption of nutrients the thyroid depends on to make and activate its hormones. So, what started out looking like two separate problems suddenly became one interconnected story. And this was a huge shift for me. I stopped asking, what disease do I have? And started asking, what processes inside my body could explain everything I'm experiencing? That's the question that changed my career. And honestly, it's still the question I ask every time I work with a client. My next question became, what had changed inside of my digestive system? I already understood the importance of nutrition. I knew the digestive tract was where we digested food and absorbed nutrients. But as I dug deeper into the research, I began to appreciate just how much more was happening there. I learned that the digestive tract isn't simply a place where food is processed. It's a highly active communication center. It communicates constantly with the immune system. It influences inflammation. It's home to trillions of microorganisms that participate in digestion, nutrient metabolism, and immune regulation. It produces signaling molecules that communicate with other organs throughout the body. And the integrity of the intestinal barrier helps determine what enters the bloodstream and what stays inside the digestive tract. As I connected these pieces together, my symptoms began to make more sense. Instead of viewing my thyroid, my digestion, my muscle pain, and my fatigue as unrelated problems, I began to see them as different expressions of the same interconnected physiology. And that shift changed the way I looked at health forever. Which pattern is the body trying to show us? Not which symptom should we treat. So now my brain is officially out of control. Every morning I'd wake up thinking, okay, what's wrong with me today? One day I'd think, definitely parasites. The next day, nope, it's got to be my thyroid. Then maybe I'm allergic to everything I ate yesterday. And then maybe I'm dying. You know how we do. The internet can convince you you've got 6 rare diseases before breakfast. But here's what all that reading finally taught me. I wasn't sick because I hadn't found the right diagnosis. I was confused because I was looking at individual pieces instead of the whole picture. It's like walking into an orchestral rehearsal, hearing one violin playing out of tune, and deciding the violin is the entire problem. Meanwhile, the percussion section is asleep, the trumpet player is in the parking lot, and the conductor called in sick. The body is much more like an orchestra than a collection of independent instruments. Everything affects everything else. And once I understood that, I stopped trying to identify the loudest system. And I started trying to understand who started the argument. Because in physiology, somebody usually started it. So after all these years of reading research, studying physiology, and trying to understand my own health, I realized that every practitioner is looking at the body through a particular lens. A gastroenterologist naturally focuses on the digestive system. An endocrinologist focuses on hormones. A rheumatologist focuses on joints. A neurologist focuses on the nervous system. And that's exactly what they're all trained to do. But the body doesn't know what specialty the doctor practices. The body is just trying to function. And that's why I eventually stopped asking, which specialist do I need? And started asking, what pattern is my body showing me? And that's what a clinical pattern review is. It's stepping back and looking at the whole picture. Your symptoms, your health history, your medications, your diet and lifestyle, your environment, your stress, and when appropriate, functional laboratory testing. Because none of those things exist by themselves. They tell a story. And when you put enough of the pieces together, the body usually starts making a whole lot more sense. That's why I named it a clinical pattern review, because we're not just collecting symptoms. We're looking for the conversations taking place underneath them. So after all this studying, people started asking me questions, which was a little intimidating because I was still thinking, are you sure you want to ask me? Then I realized almost everyone was asking the same question. Val, what test should I get? And here's the truth. If I recommend the same test for everybody, I'd save myself a whole lot of thinking. But I'd also be wrong, because everybody tells a different story. Some people need a GI map. Some people need a comprehensive thyroid panel. Some people need hormone testing. Some people don't need any testing. But before I can recommend a test, I need to understand the person, their symptoms, their health history, medications, all of that. And once we understand the pattern that we start to see, the next step usually becomes much clearer. So, did I ever figure it out? Yes, but not in a weekend, not from one book, not from one test, and certainly not from one supplement. I went back to school. I studied nutrition formally. I spent years learning physiology, biochemistry, and functional medicine. I completed clinical training. I learned from experienced practitioners who had been helping people long before I met them. I asked questions, I made mistakes, I kept learning, and little by little, I started understanding my own body. As my understanding grew, my health began to change. The pain gradually became less frequent. My energy improved. I began recognizing what my body was trying to tell me instead of simply reacting to symptoms. Looking back, healing wasn't one dramatic moment. It was the result of thousands of small decisions guided by better understanding. And my point is this. Walking out of that hospital forced me to start asking questions no one else was asking for me. It forced me to stop waiting for someone else to explain my body and start learning its language myself. Looking back, I didn't walk away from health care. I walked toward physiology. I walked toward nutrition and functional testing and systems biology. And eventually I walked into graduate school and then another degree, and then years of working with colleagues and clients. Looking back, walking out of that hospital wasn't the end of my story. It was the first step into the career I was supposed to have. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever Googled a symptom? Don't lie. Every hand should be up. You start with, why am I tired? And 20 minutes later, you've diagnosed yourself with 17 rare diseases. And you're updating your will. We've all done it. You know why? Because when you don't have answers, your imagination fills in the blanks. I know exactly what that feels like. I remember waking up every morning wondering, okay, what's it going to be today? Muscle pain, joint pain, brain fog, food reactions. Am I tired because I didn't sleep? Or because my body is trying to tell me something? And that's all exhausting. And honestly, sometimes feeling like nobody can connect the dots is almost as frustrating as the symptoms themselves. That's why I do what I do, not because I have a magic answer. I don't. But I do know what it's like to feel as though your body is speaking a language no one around you understands. So that's why I walked out of the hospital, not because I had all the answers. I walked out because I realized I was asking the wrong people the right questions. Looking back, I'm actually grateful for that day because if I'd stayed, I might never have become curious enough to understand what my body was trying to tell me. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here talking with you today. You know, we spend our lives living inside these amazing bodies, and somehow nobody gives us the instruction manual. We get a toaster with instructions. We get a coffee maker with instructions. We even get instructions for a pair of Bluetooth headphones, which are very dangerous. But the most complicated thing we'll ever own, they just send us home and say, good luck. That's why I believe our job isn't to fight the body, it's to become curious about it. Because symptoms aren't your body betraying you. They're your body trying to get your attention. And maybe the answer isn't hiding in one symptom, one diagnosis, or one laboratory test. Maybe the answer is hiding in the story your body has been trying to tell you all along. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember to listen to your body before it has the chance to raise its voice.